recognizing the men and women and indeed organizations that fly our flag, I'm singularly reminded of the one person who flew the South African flag for many, many, many years under very difficult and trying circumstances when our country was subjected to apartheid rule, and that was Oliver Reginald Tambo. These awards remind me of him, and I've made some suggestions to the Deputy Minister about how we can also enhance and recast these awards. These awards are taking place in the year that South Africa assumes the chairship of the African Union. Some of you may know that this is not the first time that we become chair of the African Union. We are becoming chair of the African Union for the second time. We first held the position in the year 2002 when the African Union was relaunched as the African Union on South African soil from the OAU to the African Union, and our own then President Thabo Mbeki was elected as the first chair of the African Union. Our team returned, as you've heard, recently from Addis Ababa earlier this week, where we formally accepted as South Africa the chairship of the AU at the 33rd Ordinary Session of the Assembly of Heads of States and Government. This is indeed an immense honor that has been bestowed on our country. As before, we are guided in this work by the rallying cry of the Freedom Charter, which says, "Let there be peace and friendship." And when the drafters of the Freedom Charter articulated that aspiration when they drafted the Freedom Charter, they were talking about peace and friendship not only in South Africa, but peace and friendship right across our continent and right across the world. Chairing the African Union is a great responsibility, and one we as South Africa intend to execute with diligence and commitment over the coming year. Supporting our diplomatic machinery will be the men and women gathered here this evening. It is you who are out there in the capitals of the world, from as far afield, if you like, from Helsinki to Washington, from Beijing to Perth, from Ouagadougou to Harare, working tirelessly to promote the interests of South Africa and to foster peace and friendship around the world. Whether it is in business, in sport, or in arts and culture, your efforts as South Africans continue to strengthen our country's position by acting as global ambassadors and keeping our flag flying high. And tonight, I'd like to say thank you, thank you, thank you for flying the South African flag high. You have assumed the task as you fly this flag high. You have taken into your hands the task of elevating what I would call brand South Africa in the community of nations. For we know indeed that South Africa's exports go beyond, way beyond the goods and services. Yes, we export goods and services around the world to many countries, but we also export a whole lot of other things. We are rich in arts, in culture, in sports, in science, in business as well as in ideas. But we are also rich in the talent of South Africans. Talent that resides in young people, talent that resides in South Africans who are exhibiting their talent right across many fields and right across the world. This is a great source of pride for us as South Africans. Yesterday, I had the honor of playing golf with an 8-year-old boy who is already number 7 in the whole world in his age group. Number 7 best golfer in the whole world is a South African. And today we also saw an 11-year-old who is already amongst the top 10 writers in the world. And we have the best rugby team in the world. Whether they like it or not, it is the best rugby team. So you can keep on counting the best this, the best that, the best that. And that is what we export. This is the South Africa that we are. During our term as AU chair, we are committed to strengthening the AU itself and other continental institutions such as the Pan-African Parliament and the African Peer Review Mechanism. Now, this mechanism had weakened along the way, and I was delighted to see it rising again and becoming an effective mechanism where we as African countries do a peer review of each other, where we visit certain countries, look at the progress they are making, make constructive criticism of what they should do and make suggestions. And I saw it in action recently in our AU summit. And as South Africa, we are going to revive it, repackage it and reposition it as well. We're going to work with the structures of the African Union to deepen the unity of our continent and to advance inclusive growth and sustainable growth and development. This we aim to achieve through supporting integration, economic integration, through supporting the industrialization of our continent, economic development, trade and investment right across the continent. This will become particularly significant when the African Continental Free Trade Area becomes operational later this year. And we are delighted that, yes, of course, it will be based in Ghana, but we are also delighted that a South African has been chosen as the first Secretary General of this Free Trade Area Agreement, and that gives us a great deal of pride. Now, this Free Trade Area will be an important step towards rebalancing global trade relations and leveling the playing field for African business. Through the Continental Free Trade Area, we want to reignite and revamp industrialization on our continent. We also want to boost intra-African trade and benefit from the largest common market that we are now going to create on the African continent. Our emissaries for economic diplomacy, many of whom are here tonight, will play an increasingly prominent role. We will work to strengthen good governance in Africa. As you heard our award recipient, Umamo Brigadier Bam, saying, more and more good elections are being held on our African continent. That behoves well for the governance of our continent. We will work to advance women's economic empowerment and financial inclusion. This is an important task that we want to see achieved. And we will also intensify the continental struggle to end violence against women and children on our continent. Through the AU Peace and Security Council, the AU Commission, and the collective membership, we will focus our efforts on conflict resolution across the African continent. We will continue to advocate for a fairer, more just, more prosperous, and stable world. A world in which no one is left behind. A world in which we show and demonstrate compassion to the weakest and the most vulnerable amongst us, not only on the African continent, but in the world. We remain firm in our commitment to the peaceful resolution of conflict and a multilateral approach to world affairs. As a global community, we confront common challenges. Challenges such as climate change, which you as our ambassadors, in whatever field you operate, we all have to deal with. We confront challenges such as migration, and we also confront challenges such as disease. Now we've got a disease that is presenting itself as a major challenge, not only to China, our friendly country, but also to many other countries around the world. And yesterday I sent a letter of solidarity to President Xi Jinping, President of China, to strengthen his resolve as we deal with this challenge of a disease that has engulfed China, but is also a great threat to many others. But we applaud them for the absolute extensive work that they are doing to contain this disease. And this can happen to any country. It's now happened to China, and we are really grateful that the leadership of China is dealing with this disease with the resolve that they are demonstrating. We also confront challenges such as human trafficking, terrorism, as well as hunger. But one of the overriding challenges we face is also poverty, which is also a daily occurrence here in our own country. But we should all work together to confront these challenges and address them. These challenges and problems are not beyond us. They are challenges and problems that are within our ability to resolve. No country can hope to achieve lasting peace and prosperity for as long as there are other countries mired in poverty, in conflict, and in chaos. We need to work together to create that harmony, the harmony that the world needs, to strengthen a rules-based multilateral approach to global governance, to trade, to conflict resolution, to peacekeeping, and all other areas of international relations. This is the agenda that South Africa will continue to pursue through all international fora in which we participate as a country, in which we interact with other nations and institutions in the world, from the United Nations to the African Union, and from the G20 to BRICS as well. What we are doing here this evening, celebrating excellence in diplomacy. And when we talk about this form of diplomacy, we're not only confining it to the work of our ambassadors and high commissioners. This is diplomacy that is overarching, in which many of us are all involved. All of us should see ourselves as being involved in being the good ambassadors and good flag carriers of our country. And this work aligns with our broader efforts to achieve the objectives that I've articulated, because conflict occurs only when diplomacy has collapsed. And it can be conflict in business, can be conflict in sports, it can be conflict between countries as well. The various categories of these prestigious awards are indicative of the fact that successful diplomacy is an integrated effort, and one that draws together different activities, qualities, different people, different talents, and different capabilities. These awards illustrate that being an ambassador for South Africa, as I was saying, is not the preserve of any particular group. It is for the young as much as it is for the older, for the musician as much as it is for the politician, for the sports players as much as it is for our cultural artists, as much as it is also for business people. I want to congratulate all those who've been given